the Governance and Audit Committee. The first item on the agenda is the election of chair for the 2021-22 municipal year. Could I have nominations, please?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Clive, if he would do it. Clive Lloyd, Councillor Clive Lloyd, if he's here. I don't know if I haven't spoken to him about it, but
I'll chair, Mike.
oh, sorry, Vice Chair was saying. So I do apologise. Sorry.
No,
Okay.
sorry. If I
Jump
can
in
just, yeah, this is the election for the chair of the Governance and Audit Committee.
Right.
So we're
Sorry.
seeking nominations.
So could I have nominations, please?
Could I nominate Paula, please?
Okay.
Yeah.
And can I have a second, please?
I'll second
Yes,
that.
I'd second. I second that.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay. All in favour?
Yep. Aye.
Okay. If you can show your hands, please. There we are. Okay. Thank you very
That
much.
would appear to be unanimous.
Yeah. Okay. Paula?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your confidence in electing me through as chair once again. Can we take nominations for the election of vice chair, please?
Before you nominate there, can I just clarify you were legal as well? I thought the vice chair had to be a member of the opposition.
No, there is no such
Yes.
requirement. There are some requirements going forward under the Local Government and Elections Wales Act, that the chair is the lay member, but there are no requirements in terms of the vice chair under the local government measure at the moment.
Thank you.
Therefore, I'd like to resume what I said earlier and nominate Councillor Clive Lloyd as Vice Chair.
I second that, Paula.
Okay, thank you. Are we happy to, any other nominations? No? Can we have show of hands for the purposes of Jeremy here? Okay. Is Clive in the meeting?
I am here. I wasn't aware I was being nominated. Sorry.
Welcome, Clive.
Thanks, Paula.
Welcome to the Audit Committee and welcome to the position and the confidence for the Vice Chair role as well. Okay, then, if we can move on, can we take apologies for absence, please?
Apologies from Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams and from Jason Garcia, Audit Wales, and Simon Cockings.
Thank you very much. Can we take disclosures of interests, please, both personal and prejudicial? Julie Davis.
Yes, I'd like to declare a personal interest in the Grand Theatre, because I was employed there until October 2019.
Thank you. Councillor Jennifer Rayner.
Thank you, Chair. As a recent Cabinet Member for Education, there may be times when schools are mentioned where I would have to declare a personal interest, very rarely a personal and prejudicial interest, unless the monitoring officer advises otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cyril Anderson.
Yeah, Chair. In item 6, I'm a member of the Port Health Authority, and it's mentioned in one of the appendices. Okay,
thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yes, a personal and prejudicial interest with regard to the report on the Grand Theatre.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Lewis.
Yes, Chair. I'm also a member of the Port Health Authority, so I'd like to declare a personal interest if that's possible.
Okay, thank you. Any other interests?
Yes, Chair, I've got to put my hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Port Authority as well.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Personal interest.
Thank you. But your hand was hidden from the screen for that moment. Apologies for that. Jeremy's corrected it all now. Okay, if we can move on then to the minutes of the meeting of the 18th of May. If we can take them for accuracy page by page, and if there are any comments you wish to make, stop me, please. So page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, and page 6. Are we satisfied that those minutes are accurate and reflective of that meeting?
Chair, can I just query paragraph 73, please? Virtually the last paragraph in the minutes. Councillors are requested to forward ideas to Democratic Services. Should that be all members of the Audit Committee?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give an update on that later on in the agenda, in the work programme. Okay. Are we happy to accept that? Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, Jeremy?
Yeah. Good.
That's lovely. Thank you so much. Okay, we've got the next agenda item 6, which is the Internal Audit Plan 2021 and the monitoring report to the end of the year, March 21. The Chief Auditor, Simon Cockings, is off this afternoon, but we've got Nick to join us to take us through that report. So if I can welcome Nick. Members would have seen Nick attend the Audit Committee previously. So Nick, if I can invite you to go through the report, assuming that we've read the report, but just to pick up any key factors that you would wish to reinforce and to draw to the committee's attention, please. So Nick, can I welcome you in?
Yeah, hi Chair. Thanks and thanks again, and good afternoon to everybody. As the Chair said, my name is Nick Davis and I'm the Principal Auditor for Internal Audit. As the Chair mentioned, Simon couldn't be here today for a prior appointment, so I'm here to present the Q4 monitoring report, which covers the period the 1st of Jan 21 to the 31st of March 21. And I believe this is for information only report. So, as members may be aware, our annual report was presented to committee by Simon last month, and this report would normally come before that. However, because of time and priorities, the annual report had to be prioritised and linked in with the annual governance statement. So that's why we're presenting this this month. So if members would like to refer to agenda item 6 in the reports pack, which is on page 7. And I'll just run through the main highlights of the report. So 1.2, this report would show the audits finalised in the period 1st of Jan to 31st of March. And if we go into section 2, we can see that a total of 25 audits were finalised during the quarter. And the audits finalised are listed in Appendix 1, which also shows the level of assurance given. Appendix 2 then also provides a summary of the scope for the reviews that we've undertaken. 2.2 shows the assurance levels that were given for the 25 audits, and you can see 10 at a high assurance, 12 at substantial assurance, and 3 a moderate assurance. And a total of 209 recommendations were made, and all were agreed to be implemented by management, bar 1. So that's an agreement rate of 99.5%, and against our target of 95%. Table 2.4. We have the risk ratings for each of those 208 accepted recommendations. So you can see 3 were high risk, 33 medium, 121 low, and 51 good practice. Moving on to 2.6, the section also completed and certified the following grants, which are listed in the table below. And in 2.7, some additional work completed during the quarter, which is the review of delegated decision making, the continuation of our support and checks in relation to the various COVID grants that were issued across the council to businesses. And we're also consulting with education at the minute on the redrafting of account instructions for schools. And finally, we did a review of the progress for the Swansea Central Phase 1 scheme. Moving forward, basically from 2.8 all the way down to 2.27 in this report, it basically explains about some of the challenges that myself, Simon and the team have faced over the last 12 months and some of the off-plan work that we've completed. But I believe this information was in last month's annual report presented by Simon, so I won't go into too much detail here. Moving on to 2.28, which is on page 12, the bottom of page 12. 3 moderate reports were issued in the quarter, and the following tables provide brief details of the issues that led to us issuing a moderate rating for those reports. Again, you can see in the table, they were accounts receivable, the Grand Theatre, and a review of management of absence. And again, I'm not going to go into the detail in this report, as I believe we've got officers here to go through the current status. And if they're not here this month, they will be here next month. So moving on to page 17 and section 3. During the quarter, we completed 1 follow-up of a moderate assurance report, and that was the employment of agency workers. We completed the review in January 21 and concluded that significant progress had been made by the service to implement recommendations made. And we did discover a few instances of non-compliance. So what we've agreed is we will pick them up in the next review, the next full review, which is programmed in for this year. Finally, if we move on to page 19, which is Appendix 1, as discussed earlier, you can see a table of all the reports finalised. Appendix 2 is the summary of the scope for the 25 audits finalised. And Appendix 3 is the table of the 1 recommendation that wasn't accepted by management. You can see the audit review, which that one was for, what the recommendation was, and the reason why they didn't accept that. And you can see it's basically due to COVID and the lack of staff on site. Finally, Appendix 4, and again, you will have had this table in Simon's annual report last month. It gives a status as at the 31st of March 21 of all the audits in the plan, and whether they've been finalised, in progress or deferred. Okay, and that's that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Before I open up to questions, as Nick has mentioned, that we've got officers attending the meeting today to address those 3 moderate reports. So if we can hold comments until those officers are present, I think that would be.
The third one is next month, isn't it?
Right, okay. But if there are any questions on that report, can you raise hands, please? Councillor Sinrel-Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I take you to page 14? It's under the Grand Theatre assurance levels. Looking at the income in item 2, as a date of the 17th of the 3rd, 2016. Can you tell me why it's taken so long there? And secondly, there is a large invoice of £23,676 had been referred to legal. Have this been sorted out, please?
Right, okay, yeah. Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Can I get back to you on the detail of those, if you don't mind? I'll need to see the report in depth, and then I can get back to you on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay.
Thank you, Nick. Councillor Leslie Walton.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. One on page 13, under accounts receivable, and section 2, debt recovery. It was a comment I think I made before, and this is not an absolute criticism, because hindsight is such a wonderful thing, but it's more of a comment than a question. I notice it says 3 experienced members were pulled over to be involved in the Oracle Cloud, and I'm just wondering if in the future it might have been better to have left one of those experienced members still in the debt recovery department and taken 2 over. It's more of a comment, and I can appreciate there must have been a lot of thought that went into this, so I'm not saying that would have been right, I'm just putting it out there. So that's more of a comment. The other one I want to look at, page 15, on management of absence. The very first point about directors who are supposed to take mandatory training, and I find it a bit worrying that the vast majority of them haven't taken this mandatory training. Having said that, I know full well that whilst the learning pool is a brilliant idea, it needs self-discipline to make yourself book onto courses and do them. And sometimes you've got so much on, it just keeps getting shifted. So I was wondering, are there reminders sent to managers to prod them and say, you need to be doing this training, book now? And similarly, in the 3 years later, again, have you booked your refresher, do it now? So that was it on those 2 points. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, can I ask? There's a lot of background noise, and I noticed I did mute you, and it stopped. So your office where you're sitting is interfering when somebody's talking.
If someone's been trying to watch it live and there's no sound, so Jeremy's trying to work in the background, so apologies for that, Councillor Anderson. Is it any better now?
Yes, a lot better, thanks.
Okay, apologies for that, everyone. As I say, it's a gremlin on the system somewhere, as always. Okay, sorry, Nick. Do you want to?
Sorry, I'm just going to reply to Councillor Walton. I believe that Adrian will be here next month to give us an update on the management of absence, and I don't believe that there are reminders sent out to supervisory posts to complete the mandatory training. But again, probably Adrian would be better to confirm that with you once maybe he's spoken to the learning pool or the training pool to confirm that. I mean, ideally that would be something that they should be looking into, but I think there's something that we can speak to Adrian on then next month when he's due to attend.
Can you ask him to look into that and get back to me? I might well forget by next meeting, but I would like to know. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah.
I think that's a valid point, Councillor Walton, and we make sure it's recorded in the minutes so that it's not lost.
Thank you.
Julie Davis.
Hi, thanks, Chair. Nick, one question on the recommendation not accepted.
Yeah.
I presume it's low risk because of the low materiality of funds going through the service, but with lack of division of duties, are there any other controls that are operating, such as regular review by accountants or analytical review of expenditure year on year?
Yeah, I mean, we can look at that, and I can certainly make inquiries with the officer in charge, in the section. But from looking at the report, they were down to a skeleton staff due to COVID, and of course the the sort of social distancing. So on not all, it's a low risk because there were few occasions that were picked up where there was that lack of segregation of duties. But I can certainly make inquiries to see if there are any other compensating controls that could be put in place, i.e. maybe a periodic review of those purchases to by a different member of staff. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And another question in relation to the audit team over the previous lockdowns. How much do you think it's impacted your ability to validate the information that you're being given by officers?
It all depends really, Julie, on the information that we've received. It's obviously there's some things that we haven't been able to validate, and if we haven't, then we haven't included those in the reviews. But we would certainly ask for evidence of any testing that we undertaken that are undertaken, and if we can't substantiate any evidence, then of course we won't report on it, or we will to say that evidence hasn't been received.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Got a few hands up, so if you can be patient with me, please. Councillor Mike White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In regards to the three moderate reports there, in the Grand Theatre, Chair, I noticed there were 4 previous recommendations made. Is Nick able to advise as to what measures the audit team can take to ensure that the recommendations are implemented in a satisfactory time?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor White. Yeah, well, what we do, obviously, any recommendations that aren't implemented, when we do the second review, we will note them in the report as re-reported, and if they continue to be re-reported, we can escalate them up to the next level, i.e. if it's a low risk, we can recommend that they maybe go up to a medium risk, and of course that can have an overall effect then on the overall assurance rating that we give for that section. But any re-reported recommendations we will take a closer look to ensure that they have been implemented, and if not, we will highlight them again in the next report.
Can I just say, is there any sort of guidance on the times that you would be looking to see these recommendations implemented?
Yeah, it depends what they are, Councillor White, but normally we would look to follow these up within a 3 to 6 month period. That's our standard follow-up time, and of course, depending then on what management come back with, they may ask for a little bit more time. It all depends on the recommendation, really. But we will not sign off that follow-up until all recommendations have been completed, and which confirmed by management. And of course, if we do go back out and we see that the same issues are reoccurring, then we will highlight that again.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jeff Jones, and then Adam following Councillor Jeff Jones, please.
Yeah, thanks. Just a point of clarification. It's page 12, 223. It's about the business rate grant. It actually says every involved provide insurance over the revised activities. What are the revised activities? And it mentions the fraud team. There's a lot of hoo-ha with grant payments being fraudulently, shall we say, given out or taken really around the country. What involvement was the fraud team in this exercise?
Yeah, we've got, as you know, Jeff and Johnny from the fraud team working closely with a lot of sections that are issuing these business grants. I won't go into too much detail on that because I know there's a annual report coming. I think it's next month, and they will give you an update on any fraud that they have possibly picked up. But yeah, we are actively working and members of the team in the audit section working with sections to ensure that as much as possible that the grants going out should be going out to the right people and for the right amounts.
Thank you.
Yeah. And finally, Adam, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to come back onto the mandatory online training, just to give members of the committee a bit of assurance. A reminder is sent out, certainly to all heads of service, to remind their managers as part of their programme. The last one went out on the 26th of April to all heads of service and HR business partners to remind them through any interaction that they have. Also, it's also picked up by the appraisals and performance reviews, and should also be picked up in one-to-ones right through the structure to remind staff of the need to go into it. Adrian will be able to work more on what the percentages are currently, but it was just to give assurance that we do send reminders out, and they go out regularly as a reminder. Thank you, Chair.
There are no further questions from members. I just wanted to comment on the deferred audits, which is a comment that I've made in previous meetings. Looking at the final position in March, we need to note that the governance and control elements of the plan, there was 50% of that work deferred. There was 66% deferred in education, 66% deferred in child and family, 100% deferral in building services. 3 of the 5 audits for the Chief Transformation Officer were deferred, and 5 of the 6 deferred in the computer area of the plan. We've previously accepted the reasons Simon has given for those deferrals, but for the purposes of assurance and the opinion that's been presented in the previous meeting, I think we need to note it again for the minutes, so that we've got context around the level of work that's been done and the assurance that's been levied against that work. No reflection at all on the audit team. They've done extremely well for delivering what they've delivered. So well done again, Nick. I have said and passed on my my gratitude to the team for what you've achieved during a very difficult year. And so have other members of the audit, the governance and audit committee. So if there are no further questions on that. Oh, sorry, we've still got no, I think they're residue hands. Adam, is your hand still up for any?
No, I just wanted to reinforce what you've just said. One, I think we need to note what has been deferred, but on the other hand, to thank the team for all the work they've done over the last year. My hats are off to them across the whole council. My hats are off to most workers, and I know they've done whatever they possibly could under very difficult circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, is your hand up from previous? Councillor Jeff Jones? Thank you.
My apologies.
No problem. If we can move then on to agenda item 7, which is the accounts receivable update, and we can welcome Sean and Michelle.
Chair, I'm going to come in at this point, if I may.
Okay.
Leading on from what Councillor Walton has said, I mean, to some extent, it's a bit of a sort of mea culpa in terms of the first part. After Nick Sterling standing, I'm afraid you've got me instead of the 2 officers who could have given you detail on the report. They're both tied up with Oracle stuff, and that's part of the point, Councillor Walton, that yeah, I mean, AR and the wider accountancy and finance stuff is a bit pipeline production. It's not only last year, it's current month, next month, and also making sure we've got something operative for the following year. And the context is such that, in similar vein that you've acknowledged the hard work that officers have done, I'd say the same for the accounts receivable team. It's been in complicated and difficult circumstances with COVID. They've still managed to assist my overall finance team in hitting that 31st of May deadline for the accounts, which was rather more pressing than the update in accounts receivable in itself. And similarly, in terms of supporting the reporting on outturn, which will be going to Cabinet next week, which will set some of the context for this. The section 1.4 sets out a range of qualitative and quantitative improvements that have been made, and it's fair to say it remains a journey. It's pleasing to see that we've refilled the complement of staff, but as Councillor Walton has said, you know, people can't be everywhere, and we've had to second some people off. That was a management decision on my part, because I need to make sure the replacement system works as well, if not better than what we've got. And I'm sure committee members, given their interest in accounts receivable, will be interested in the values ascribed at the end of that section 1.4. But again, I would set it in the context of sweating the bigger stuff, which is getting the statement of accounts out by the 31st of May, which is no mean feat with a whole year ravaged by COVID and remote working. And also, as I say, when members do see and read the outturn reports which are being published, you will see the relative scale there compared to what are relatively modest sums in this report, notwithstanding that members take a keen interest in it. So I have very little to add, particularly to the report. It's one with two recommendations. The recommendations are to continue to keep pressure up on service departments, that we will continue reporting through to CMT, and we will be routinely and regularly reporting back here. My advice would be that the next update comes in September, because decisions that Adam and I have made around some of the other commitments that Sian and her team have, I mean, they're likely to be busy over the next couple of months. So unless a committee violently objects, I would request that the next update comes in September, because one of the things we do otherwise struggle with is turning the reports around in rapid fashion when, as I say, it's pipeline production. Every month stuff's got to be done as well. So I've got nothing else particularly to add, but I will endeavour to answer questions if there are questions, as is most likely on the values referred to in the report.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Are there any questions on this paper, please? And recognising there was a section in the audit report 229, which gave the position of the last audit review. Councillor Jennifer Reena. Councillor Jennifer Reena.
Thank you, and thank you to Ben for his summary. Listening to it, and I can understand there have been enormous pressures this year, but are we actually under-resourced in this area?
The decision on resourcing is one ultimately by me as Section 151 officer and Adam in terms of giving advice to Cabinet. It's a difficult one. I'd always like more resources. We could put more resources on it, but equally, if you look at the inroads that have been made, we're only now back to a full complement. It is doubly difficult with the secondment of staff over, undoubtedly, Councillor Rayner. I wouldn't particularly want to say I want more. I could say the same about a whole raft of areas. Audit committees expressed similar views around the fraud team, the audit team. In an ideal world with unlimited cash, I could think of 101 other things to spend money on. But I go back to the point I was making, which is it's about proportionality. When you see what inroads are being made, the team is undoubtedly under the cosh, as is the fraud and audit team. But when you compare what's in here and the size of it and the inroads that are being made, with when you review the reports that are going to Cabinet next week and are already out in the public domain, where you'll see a scale of magnitude that is such that my judgment call at this point in time is that the resource allocation is broadly right in terms of sweating the big stuff, and I treat these as relatively small stuff. I know members on the committee don't, because in isolation they look like very, very big numbers, but you're referring to a few million here and tens of thousands there, as opposed to tens of millions in terms of the big ticket items in the Cabinet report. So I recognise what Councillor Rayner says, and yes, more resources would be jolly useful for the whole of the Resources Directorate, and I'm sure the director would say the same, but he will equally caveat saying officers advise and ultimately council decides the budget.
Okay, I've got a few hands up now. Adam, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, just on that final point really that Ben was made, and you know, the AR section do a sterling job in terms of what they can do, but remember this is a whole authority issue, not just AR. AR picked the bat up at the end of this programme. It's for every service area across the authority to be responsible for any debts and to chase them and follow up on them themselves in that first instance. It's only when it becomes a legacy do the AR service team really have to step in at that point, and then we go through legal. But it's about making sure that we have robust challenge from early on across all services, so that it doesn't get to this level of debt. And that way the pressure isn't on the AR team, it's on the rest of the authority, and that's through the P&FM performance and financial monitoring. We make sure that AR is covered right through every directorate. It's picked up there, so it's a directorate responsibility in each area in that first instance. We go through them, have a look what they are, and then signpost each manager ahead and service to take the appropriate action, so that we can address it early in the chain, not right at the end. And I'd echo all Ben's comments in terms of I could have the same ask for every department that I have across resources for more people. But unfortunately, we are cash strapped as an authority in terms of where we can put extra resources. But I could say the same in legal, in governance, in all the service areas.
Thank you, Adam. Councillor Leslie Walton.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Funnily enough, this is going back to the point I made in the previous item about moving people across to the Oracle Cloud project. So I just wondered, where are we on that? And, you know, was it worth it putting 3 experienced members over to it? You know, has it borne fruit? Because I'm all for making sure you do things that aim for a long-term improvement rather than so much. It's very easy to do short-term quick fixes, which in fact don't work. So I'm hoping you're going to tell me that the Oracle project is on course.
There are issues which affect it as a result of the COVID pandemic, but we have a programme board which manages it, and there will be full reporting in due course back to Cabinet. We have no choice. The reality is we're on a system that is end of life, and we have to migrate it over. We are working flexibly with our strategic partners, with officers across the council and our external auditors, and we will migrate when we can, recognising that there are issues as a result of the COVID pandemic. Again, I draw your attention to members to the outturn report. The outturn report going to Cabinet makes clear that there is some slippage in terms of the financing of it and a rollover of the monies needed. But in reality, Councillor Walton, it's not yet fully borne fruit because we're not in the new phase, but we have no choice because otherwise fundamental systems will fall over. And that is the reason I was alluding to why the officers who'd have been better placed than me to answer the specific questions are elsewhere today. I hope that gives you some assurance on the matter. And the reality is I had to put experienced officers on it because it also has to work in a year's time and 2 years' time, as well as last year and current year.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yes, you know, Jennifer's Rainer's question with regard to under-resourced, I think, you know, everybody is agreed that, you know, the section is under-resourced anyway. But actually saying that, I think, you know, from where officers actually came in front of us, I think it was it 2 years ago? I think, you know, they seem to have moved a long way in actually getting things, or definitely reducing the outstanding debt anyway. But I can actually see, you know, in the report, I'm glad to see what you call it, this regularly month debt monitoring routine actually in place. The old purchase orders, people actually going out without purchase orders, seems to be an area that's improved a lot and so on. But one area is actually down here. It actually says further MS team reminders were also posted covering the purchase order requirement, the need to provide evidence of the debt, a Lloyds Bank debt awareness guide document. I must admit, I'd like to actually have sight of that to see what it says. Is that possible?
I see no reason why not. I will refer that back to the officers concerned to see if they can share it with committee members if they're all interested in it, or just yourself if you're interested in it. I would have thought it's reasonable. If there's anything that's confidential we can't release under our banking arrangements, then I won't. But I will endeavour to find out from the officers concerned if it can be made available to you, Councillor Jones, and would extend that courtesy to the wider committee if you're so content.
Yeah. Did that actually only go into finance, or was it quite widespread throughout the local authority?
Well, it's the shared teams, so it would have been a whole raft of officers who are responsible for raising and paying bills, and I'm sure because it's that risk of fraud across anyone, again, I'm sure I can check that with the officers concerned, but it wouldn't be unique just to the finance team.
No. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Ben, is there any opportunity to streamline end-to-end processes alongside the Oracle implementation?
It would always be nice to do it in an ideal world. I think with the time pressures we're under, having had COVID disrupt us and try to keep things going, an awful lot of it is going to be about getting it across in a form that at least works. It's not an ideal answer. I'd take exactly, given your expertise and experience in sort of end-to-end process engineering, there are limited opportunities on that. The team are looking at things that they can look to streamline, but I think I have to be frank and say the opportunities are compressed as a result of being forced to effectively move product at the same time as the COVID pandemic is underway. And of course, it doesn't just affect us in this country. Our major contractor is overseas. It supplies a number of its employees from overseas. And so it's going to be really, really difficult. But I take the point entirely, Julie. But I think it unlikely that there would be major opportunity with what are very compressed timescales and a desire on my point to make sure that actual basic processes of paying invoices, receiving money, paying payroll actually works.
Okay, thank you for your honesty.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I've just got a couple of comments, if they're not. It's in respect of the all invoices and debt recovery being suspended between April and July 2020. I just wondered what the impact that has had on the current position, because obviously you've got a 4-month backlog before you start again in August, and whether you've recovered at this point. If you're unable to answer, Ben, I'm happy to take that outside of the meeting.
I think in terms of detail operationally, we'll have to take it outside the meeting, but I would wish to make the wider point as a Section 151 officer that, I had to make some pretty major decisions at the time. And again, I would ask members to equally consider anything that is said either in the meeting or when it's done by follow-up. When you see the outturn results that are going to Cabinet next week, I think with hindsight, it was perfectly justified when you see how overall the authority has managed through the pandemic and the strength of its finances that are already in the public domain. It could have been a very different answer if cash flow was tight and outturn was difficult. But I think all members, when they see what's going to Cabinet next week, and I'd advise members to have a look at it because there may be some media reporting on it. Was that we had quite a good pandemic in terms of finances after what has been a roller coaster ride. More will come in due course to Cabinet. So I think it's fine at that wider perspective, but in terms of detail, I want you to take it up with the officers and myself outside if you could, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll drop Sean an email with that question, because it clearly will have an impact on other service areas, particularly with legals. I just noticed that already 67 invoices have gone to legals and there may be more in the system. So it's got an ongoing impact on other service areas which affect this whole system. So I'll take that back and hopefully I'll be able to update the committee, when we meet next, if that's okay with members. Well, if there are no further questions on that particular paper, we're asked to note this report.
Yes.
So that's fine. So if we can move on to.
Sorry, Chair. Can I just point out there are actually 2 recommendations on this report at page 31.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tracy.
I think they are just good governance recommendations actually in the way forward. Yeah. But I think it will probably require a vote that you are agreed that those are 2 appropriate recommendations going forward.
Okay, then. So the service departments, the recommendation is service departments to be further reminded of their responsibilities and role in invoice process. And this should be reinforced through the directors and heads of service to ensure consistency and robustness of process. And that there's a continuation to report to CMT on a quarterly basis as a further update on the debt position across the authority. And I would accept Ben's suggestion that we have that update in September 2021. So are we happy to accept those recommendations? Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay. Okay, thank you, Tracy, for reminding me of that. Appreciate that. If we can move on then to agenda item 8, which is the response to the Grand Theatre Report 2020. And I believe we've got an officer to present this one. Martin Nichols.
Martin Nichols. I'll introduce the report if I may, and I've also got Tracy McNulty, the head of service responsible, and Bobby Gray, the interim theatre manager, in attendance as well to answer any questions the committee may have. If I could just give some brief introductory comments. First of all, my thanks to Simon Cockings and Nick for the support that they've given the service on this. There's been a number of issues that obviously are of concern, and they've been drawn out within the report. We aren't where we would wish to be, and I know members raised some questions earlier on in terms of some of the concerns and the fact that some of the issues that have been raised previously hadn't been addressed when this was revisited back in December, leading to the moderate assurance, which is obviously a cause for concern to myself, and I'm sure all of you as well. It isn't good enough. It's not where we want to be. I would like to, however, highlight that the action plan that's attached to the report, I believe, demonstrates some significant progress against those recommendations, including the 4 recommendations I think Councillor White raised earlier that were outstanding from the previous audit have been completed during that period. And my thanks to Tracy and Bobby for progressing those. It has been a challenging time in the Grand Theatre for all sorts of reasons, including the pandemic and the lockdown, but also a number of complex staffing matters that I want to cover this afternoon. But that has caused some difficulty in terms of dealing with some of the recommendations. I do believe, however, now that we have the foundation to be able to move those recommendations forward. And one of the reasons I wish to attend today was give the committee that reassurance as well, that myself and the head of service are actively involved now in making sure those recommendations are carried through. So that's by way of an introduction, if I may, Chair. I'll hand over to Tracy, who can give a brief overview of the report. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Martin. I'd echo my thanks also to the Audit Committee. We did request this audit. We did request back in 2019 that we would have put a rapid follow-up. We didn't foresee the pandemic, as many didn't. More than half our staff were redeployed either onto TTP or supporting the testing centres that were set up, or indeed on the COVID response. So by the time we were doing the follow-up audit, we did have a significant amount of staff absence. And that's not to, justify or make excuses, but it does demonstrate that when the staff did return to the theatre, when that sort of emergency response was ceased, the actions were addressed immediately. So whilst I was filling in the action plan in terms of identifying what needed to be done really, really quickly, they were immediately addressed when Bobby returned from TTP. And the only ones that are now still outstanding in any sense are the ones that can only really be put into action, implemented on the ground when the theatre actually reopens. So whilst we put in place process and acknowledged and agreed this is how things will work, we aren't actually open to the public, so we don't actually have anyone sort of handling cash and moving things around in that sense. So I did note on the action plan, they will need to be monitored, and we will keep an eye on those things as well. As Martin said, Bobby Gray is here, and I invite him to answer any specific queries, but I would just like to respond to Councillor White's query. Nick, I did pull up the report and had a look at it. That comment about the invoice, the 26,000, related to a specific production where the production company went bust before paying us for the services we had provided and the costs we'd incurred. So that invoice was being fielded by them. Hence, we've referred and we've taken action against him personally as he's sort of restarted somewhere else under a new business name. So we are actively pursuing that invoice, but it does happen. Companies often go bust halfway through a tour, and hence we can find ourselves in those sort of situations. So, but action is being taken on that. If you have any specific questions on the action plan, be pleased to answer them. And as I say, I'm here supported by Bobby Gray, who is stepping in to perform some interim management at the theatre at the moment. We still have a fair amount of absences.
Are there any questions from any members, please? Councillor Jennifer Rayner.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question about the progress as described in the appendix, and it relates to the issuing of complimentary tickets. There has been a policy review, and if I can find it, that is due for approval or ratification. What is the process for approving and ratifying that? Because I am concerned, always concerned, with complimentary tickets. It's not just a question of possible lost finance, but it also has a risk of a reputational risk unless there's clarity as to who's getting what and why.
Sure. In terms of it being ratified, that sits with the head of service. I would naturally and automatically get sign off from cabinet member and my director and chief finance officer. With regard to the current policy or the policy as was before, is a few years old, and it would set out who and how and why complimentary tickets may be issued. Sometimes the promoter has a very specific set of tickets for them, and sometimes they make an allocation for the house. So what generally isn't able to be undertaken in any circumstances is for us to give out free tickets without accountability to the promoter, because we have a financial agreement. Sometimes the promoter will seek for things like local hairdressers to have an allocation, because it suits them, if they're there for the whole week, for a hairdresser to be chatting away to their customers about having gone to see a show. So it does depend on the type of show, but we've updated the current policy in terms of who, how and why. It's fairly benign in terms of, we would make available to the cabinet member 2 tickets, we would make available to senior officers, and we keep account, and we keep our gifts and hospitality register, and we ensure that we keep that account, and we absolutely know. I mean, I have myself several spreadsheets based on keeping my own records of ticket allocations as well. So we do keep an eye on that. In terms of it is with me at the moment to review and to look and see if those processes are robust now, given we're only going to be half full when we do reopen with social distancing. So we may need to rethink over and over again for a recovery period. Bobby, if you have anything to add to that, do jump in on there. But if you think I've covered that, then.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question to both Nick from Audit and to Tracy, if that's okay. What assurance can the Audit Committee take from this review that key business risks are being both identified and managed effectively, risks that relate to the theatre?
Thanks, Julie. If I just come in quickly from an audit perspective, we've already programmed in a follow-up review, which will be issued now in Q2. So we will be revisiting the Grand Theatre to check that all of these recommendations have been implemented. So from an audit point of view, we are going back out there. It's already been programmed in, and we'll communicate now with the officers there to see when we can, go there and complete the follow-up. So those results will feed through into audit committee later in the year. So that is from our perspective, really.
Okay, thanks. And Tracy, what about wider business risks?
Yeah, from my perspective, it is about looking at our staffing complement, because we have been very low on capacity, and having low capacity can, it can impact on things like sign-off procedures. It can result in individuals needing to quickly repair something individually and using their P card to purchase things for those sort of activities. So it's twofold. One, it's about looking at process and procedure and ensuring those compliance factors, and we do send out kind of regular reminders to all our teams, but specifically within the Grand Theatre, because it has been in a difficult period for a sustained period of time. We are now looking at the staffing complement. We are looking at management capacity and ensuring that it's got a really strong programme management plan in place as well, for both reopening as well as how we manage the systems going forward. It's one of those situations where it's been historic issues have been addressed, and we are looking at making sure that those are fully embedded.
Mm-hmm. And do you perform horizon scanning? Because I'm thinking of business risks, like in terms of potential loss of income as a result of the arena opening. Do you identify those and manage those?
Yes, certainly. I mean, in terms of horizon scanning, our programme is booked well in advance. So, we're already taking bookings for 2023. And, we're not taking bookings immediately for immediate shows. So we are a receiving house, as in, people come to us on tour for one-nighters. The arena does present a significant risk to us. So we have been in liaison with Arts Council about being able to develop our own product, so that, we are not trying to compete with the arena for, the one-nighters, the Alan Cars. But we're also in a partnership with Race Council Cymru to look at making sure the theatre becomes more appealing to its immediate neighbours, its sort of footfall neighbours. So those residents living most adjacent to the theatre tend actually to be the residents that don't go to the theatre very much. So that's about building a new audience as well. So we've got a 3-year business plan in place to develop that too. And that's a combination of community organisations running training, catering, events, as well as the main house programme.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mike White.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. It's just a point of clarification, really. My colleague, Councillor Anderson, raised the issue of the invoice. Tracy, the 4 areas I was raised about was which was a previous, was around expenditure, P card payments, VAT, and the verifying of amounts to be done individually. But obviously, in the report, you can see that our recommendations are afoot to address these. So just on that point, Chair. So.
Apologies, thank you.
Martin Nichols.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, can I just add something to the response to Julie's question in terms of I guess, that risk visibility, just 2 additional points. As part of the annual service planning process, it was suspended last year as a result of COVID. Tracy and all the heads of service will be responsible for looking at each of the areas of their service area and identifying the key risks. And that gets then brought to me as the director then. So we identify a directorate approach to what our key directorate and service risks are. So that's done on an annual basis as well. So that gives a little bit of visibility. as part of that. And the other point is in terms of the, because of the moderate assurance rating, it automatically triggers the escalation of that audit report to myself via our PFM process. So it gets brought to my attention, then gets put on our directorate meeting. So obviously I've got then that visibility, hence my involvement today. So there are a couple of additional safeguards if things haven't progressed in the way they should have, which is the case previously here. I think we're now back on track with the measures that have been outlined within the report.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. If there are no other questions, just this comment from me really. I was very disappointed to see the contents of the audit report, because it's been a basic breakdown of internal control around segregation of duties, the management supervision structure, a whole basic fundamental areas of work. But I am reassured that Martin, Tracy and Bobby, you've got a grip on it now. And I'm looking forward to seeing the follow-up report that will come from the internal auditors, in the hope that we won't see any recognition of what's happened on this occasion or for a number of years from what I can see. So again, disappointed to see the situation as it is, but hopefully with the increased focus, both from you, Martin, Tracy and Bobby, this won't happen again. So if I can thank the three of you for attending the meeting today. It's probably been quite difficult for you to see this report and to face the audit committee members and the questions that have been asked. But thank you for attending. The report is for information. So again, if you wish to leave the meeting, Martin, Tracy and Bobby, you can. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. If we can move on to agenda item 9, which is the Employment of Agency Staff Report update. And we've got Adrian Chard to take us through this report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, as you mentioned, this is an update report following an audit that took place in the previous financial year in respect of the agency worker provision and adherence to the agency worker policy. The report, there's a request that an update report be provided to basically advise on progress against areas of compliance and non-compliance, and in particular as a reference to sickness absences in those areas. So that this report really attempts to sort of summarise the position in respect of agency worker provision across the council. And in terms of the headlines of the report, since the report last year, to advise that all managers of agency workers have been reminded of the need to comply with the requirements of the agency workers policy. That policy has in fact been reviewed and updated in consultation with heads of service, with CMT, with our procurement department, and with our trade unions and our legal department, and that was approved by the JCC last month. That policy is in the stage of being translated into Welsh, and then there will be a programme of communication and engagement with the relevant managers and heads of service to ensure that they are fully aware of the requirements of the new policy and ensure compliance with it. Added to that, we continue to review with the relevant managers where we have agency workers in place to ensure that they are compliant, and also to look to address any areas where a different employment model could be used for that part of the workforce, so that we're not automatically relying on agency workers in those sorts of circumstances. In terms of a snapshot of agency workers in comparison to March of 2020, in comparison to March 2021, there has been a slight increase from 161 to 166 agency workers, but please bear in mind that is of course a snapshot, as agency workers basically come and go through the year as they are required in the workplace. Agency workers spend in comparison between the 2 financial years is broadly the same. It's last year it was £4.3 million, and in comparison the total workforce spend across our total workforce is over 387 million. In terms of compliance, you'll see under section 5 and 6 of and 7 of the report, the areas where we have monitored compliance, and particularly in respect to social services, where there's compliance against all of the areas that have been identified. And then particularly in parks, where the majority of our agency workers are, particularly in waste, parks and cleansing, we've reviewed compliance in those areas. You'll see from the report that where we have had larger numbers of agency workers, there is a programme in place with the head of service to replace those agency workers through a traineeship scheme. So we, if you like, reduce our dependence on agency workers in those areas. Agency workers are of course used for a whole range of reasons, but in particular to cover for permanent roles, but also used to cover for temporary and seasonal roles as appropriate. In terms of highways and transportation, that's the next biggest area, which is we have a number of 10 agency workers, and you'll see from the report that there are some areas where we feel there is an opportunity for us to review the engagement of agency workers in those areas, and we're currently working with those managers to identify how we can, if you like, reduce the dependence on agency workers in those areas, and hopefully have a different employment model for those areas. There's a specific request to look at sickness absence in respect of those areas where there are agency workers, particularly and concentrated particularly on highways and transportation and waste, parks and management. Overall in those areas, we've seen sickness reduced by 38% in highways and transportation, and by just over 9% in waste, parks and management. That is certainly in part due to the increased emphasis that we've placed on a number of areas across the council, and including these 2 areas, by providing more dedicated support to managers in supporting on reducing sickness absence in those areas. And a more recent initiative that we're currently recruiting for is for a person to be appointed to provide more dedicated support, shall we say, to the Place Directorate in managing sickness downwards, hopefully, in that area. And certainly where we've done this in the Social Services Department, that has had that effect of reducing sickness. So we're quite confident that this will be a positive move to reduce sickness in those areas. I think that basically concludes my sort of summary of the report, and happy to field any questions.
Questions, please. Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Adrian. I recognise that the initiative to increase the number of trainees to reduce the agency staff is an excellent one. So that's good progress. But in your table 3, although there is that initiative, the number of agency staff being used in that particular area has increased from last year. So I'm wondering what the reason for that is. And also, can you confirm, in your table, it says total numbers of workers. So that's not full-time equivalents, is it? That's just individual workers that you've specified in your table?
Yeah, that's headcount. It's not broken down into full-time equivalents. That's headcount.
Right.
In answer to your
sorry, can I just clarify then? So if an agency worker has worked for 1 day, he would be included in this table as one? Yes. Right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. In answer to your question about why there's been an increase, I can certainly go back to that area to understand why that might be, but I would say that it would probably be, this is, again, as I say, is a snapshot in time. 138 at the end of March 2020, 149 at the end of March 2021. I think the intention is, and I can clarify this with the head of service, that through traineeships they would obviously look to reduce that number. But as I say, at that particular time, I wouldn't be able to tell you at this meeting, but we can confirm later why there's been that increase at that time.
Sorry, so can I pick up on that? When you say it's a snapshot, is this just one specific day? It's not the number of agency workers that have been used throughout the year?
That's right, yes.
So it's not taken into account any seasonal staff in the middle of the summer or whatever?
No.
Right, okay. And my second point is in relation to the off-contract spend. Is procurement taking that forward to reduce off-contract spend as much as possible?
I'd say yes. Yeah. Again, I can confirm that with the procurement team and come back to you on that point. But there's certainly the intention is that the off-contract spend would reduce. Similarly, in terms of the central, shall we say, agency worker provision, there is a piece of work that's been undertaken to re-tender for that piece of work with a view to, if you like, manage and make costs as efficient as possible, shall we say.
Okay, and I'd like to ask the chair if this is possible. Would you be able to provide us with a report showing full-time equivalents?
I can certainly ask the question. That might be quite difficult to achieve, but I'll certainly ask the question if we can do that.
Okay, and also identify which how many FTEs have been employed by for more than 12 months.
Can I suggest, Adrian, not to incur you a huge amount of work, recognising the comments being made by Ben and Adam with the pressures you're already under. I think if you could look at the total spend and the average hourly rate that you're paying, that may get a rough estimate of rough full-time equivalents.
Yes, certainly. There wouldn't be any sort of attempt to not provide as much information as we possibly can. So certainly, I'd be happy to present that in as transparent and open way as we possibly can.
Thank you. Well, total spend is actually included in your report,
yeah,
and I think it's slightly less this year than last year. It's just over 4 million. So, year-on-year comparisons are pretty good.
Okay, I've got some hands up now. So, Councillor Mike White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, as I say, it seems a lot of people there of the agency there, but clearly parks cleansing are one now service area which cover quite a raft of duties, from obviously waste recycling, gardening and the litter pickers. They all come under that section. Is it possible to perhaps have a breakdown as to how many within each area? Now, I believe we've got to take into consideration, especially within the refuse collection service, of the actual physical and manual duties that those operators have to carry out. So I would imagine it might be quite a higher level there. And most importantly, these are frontline services, and the public expect this service to be actually delivered every day. Yeah. So I think that's why it is important that these departments have got a full allocation of staff. And I believe, can you just clarify as well, if you can, with the department? I know we got an initiative there for apprenticeships or trainers there for staff, but also when these people are offered the opportunity, if somebody, a permanent member of staff, actually moves on from that section, that these staff are given that opportunity to apply for those positions. Is it possible you can get some clarity on that?
Yeah, certainly I can confirm that, Councillor, that, for all posts that become vacant, agency workers will have the opportunity to apply for those positions, and often do apply for those positions, but in some cases they don't. but certainly they have the opportunity to do that.
Councillor Leslie Walton.
Thanks, Chair. I think following on again from Mike's point, in a way, it would be useful to know. I'm sorry, I'm finding it very difficult. I don't know if it's my mic, but I keep getting echo when I'm talking, and I find it a bit difficult to concentrate. Don't worry, I think I'll email through, because, as I say, I'm really just supporting what Mike says. I'd like to know more about how we've reduced agency figures and improved full actual people permanently employed. So actually the echo's gone now. I don't understand the system. Thank you.
You've still got comments to make. Your hand's still up. Councillor Mike White. You're on mute, Mike.
Yes, just the clarification of the, if it's possible to have the actual breakdown within the section.
Adrian.
Yes, certainly. I'll go back and ask for that information.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank
Councillor Sarah Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Just going on from Mike White and Leslie's comments. On page 53, the CTU, 2 agency workers providing permanent cover. You know, if there's permanent cover, obviously there's 2 jobs there that we can get rid of with getting rid of 2 agency, if we can put them onto a permanent instead of having agencies on it. Can you give me the reason why they are you know, agency instead of permanent?
Yeah, well, certainly, Councillor, that's one of the issues that we've identified now, having sort of gone through this, that there are, shall we say, pockets of these agency workers that, on the face of it, could be converted into permanent roles, or find some other alternative way of employing these people. So I've asked my HR business partner to speak to those managers concerned and identify ways in which we can, shall we say, make that a more permanent arrangement as opposed to an agency arrangement for those employees.
Yeah, thanks. I do understand, as my Councillor White was saying, with the cleansing and waste, we do get a lot of sick, you know, with injuries, I suppose, heavy lifting of the bins and bags. So I can understand where we're using agencies here.
Yeah.
Thank you anyway.
Okay.
Adam Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if it'd be helpful in this one, because we sort of straying into that sort of operational, and it's absolutely right that the audit committee look at all aspects of this, but sort of Adrian as HR manager, strategic HR manager, isn't going to have the details of the operation, and I'm just trying to stop the 2 and 4 of information for each committee. We seem to have then another set of asks that Adrian comes back to present, and then we go back again. Whether or not we could, and you know, I look to Jeremy and Tracy, but whether there's almost a task and finish element to this for one of the committees to look at this in the detail, to look at all these questions and pull all the officers relevant to this into one meeting to try and get it picked up. I don't know whether that can happen through this meeting if we want to get into that detail, because I'm just, you know, one of it is the risk and governance and assurance, which obviously absolutely right that we look at. And if we're getting into how many full-time equivalents and so on, not that you shouldn't have that, you should, but actually it's been more helpful rather than Adrian having to get more and more information. We could just sort of consolidate it into what are the questions that need to be asked, what is it that you're not assured on, and then bring everybody together so that we can do it in one go. Just a thought to try and bring this one to a sort of a close, because it just feels, you know, we've had a few stabs at this now, and we seem to knock it down the road again for more questions that we'll bring back with another report and see if we could do it in one go. Just a thought to try and be helpful, Chair.
Chair, can I just an answer to Adam? With all due respect, Adam, this has been going on for quite a few years. We've been asking, why we're trying to get rid of, if it's work there for permanent staff, you know, instead of covering, we're trying to reduce. That's why we keep on asking these questions, but we don't seem to be getting anywhere lower. As you state, as in the report, it's gone up 266.
Sorry, Cyril. I would just suggest then perhaps it's more of a scrutiny function to go through and report back through scrutiny if you want to get under the skin of this. It just feels like audit committee is straying into almost that scrutiny function rather than the governance side that we need to look at. We've had an audit report. We've come back with some stuff. I'm just trying to be helpful so that we don't keep sort of just reinventing the same questions in different ways, whether it's a scrutiny that then reports back to audit in terms of the findings. That was all I was trying to suggest.
Can I just, I mean, this did stem from a critical internal audit report, as you quite rightly say, and it was a system failure of non-compliance with procedure. So we're looking for assurance that compliance with procedure is reinstated, and also that with regards to the sickness side of it as well. And we would be looking to gain assurance that there was a drive to reduce the cost and the spend, because, you know, the total spend of in excess of 4 million year on year, I find quietly, you know, not very tasteful at all. And it's a system issue. And the only people that are making money out of this are the agency companies themselves. One of my questions, and I will invite Councillor Black and Councillor Rayner in shortly, is to whether the officers of the council has looked to develop an agency bank of their own. In the NHS world, they have their own nurse bank and their own admin bank and their own engineering bank, where all current employees are offered the opportunity to work additional shifts or work whatever they wanted, or anybody external can apply to go on the bank, which is at the going rate, not at the enhanced rates that the agency workers gain. So can I ask that question? Have you given consideration to Swansea City Council having their own agency bank?
Well, if I could come back on that point, I mean, if you look at the way the agency workers are, they are primarily in the, as Councillor earlier said, within the waste parks and management team. So in terms of a cross-council agency bank, I'm not sure that would be the appropriate way of resourcing should we say workers in that workers in that area. That's certainly something I can pick up with the relevant head of service for waste parks and management to see if that has been considered.
Okay, thank you for it works elsewhere. That's I'm aware of that. Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Chair. It's following on from the comments you made yourself about the NHS. When I look at paragraph 4, agency worker costs, the second paragraph of that point 4, the total spend on agency workers includes agencies other than staff line and RSD. Therefore, the number of agency workers will be higher when we take into account teachers and supply staff, which form a large part of the additional spend. Now, in the report, I'm not able, and I seek guidance on identifying that additional spend for teachers and supply staff. As a council, we do directly employ supply teachers, for instance, for the pupil referral unit. Schools obtain supply teachers and cover staff when they're needed. They are directed to the Welsh Government preferred agency, but there are other agencies and they can themselves make private contractual arrangements, providing they stay within the spending guidelines for employing extra staff. But essentially that is covered out of a central fund, which is distributed to schools via the delegated budget. So within Swansea, I suspect we have a considerable number of people who are agency workers, but we have no idea of the total cost and no idea of the times, number of months, weeks, days they're actually working. So I just wonder how complete this report is. And I would like some information. I'm happy to have my problems identified and to be directed where I can see where this large part of the additional spend for teachers and supply staff referred to in paragraph 4 is within this report.
Drew?
My understanding of this was that the original audit report that was commissioned did not include the provision for, shall we say, workers within the schools environment. That's probably doesn't answer your question, Councillor Rayner, but that's that probably will need to be another piece of work.
I appreciate there could be two elements. There's those who are employed via the school's delegated budget, but we do employ directly for those facilities which we run centrally. For instance, the pupil referral unit, which I know is very heavily dependent on agency staff. So perhaps I should declare an interest here.
Okay, well, certainly from the information that I've received, you know, in terms of the education directorate, that they have not been identified, if you like, in terms of the numbers. But again, I can certainly go back and speak to the education directorate and get you some more information on that, Councillor Rayner, if that helps.
Thank you. One other useful sum would be every school budget, delegated school budget, has a sum identified for supply teaching. If we had all that information totaled, have an indication of what is being set aside for possible agency workers.
So sorry, I didn't quite understand the point you're making there. Sorry.
Perhaps if I come in, because I think you were indicating me, Chair, to come in, and I do apologise. I've cut across Councillor Black. I think what Councillor Rayner is referring to is from her experience elsewhere, as she knows, individual schools do have their own budgets for their own staff, and to be fair to Mr. Child, one of the things he's got is stuff that we can source from our primary ledger, which is Oracle. But as Councillor Rayner is aware, in a former life, individual schools have their own FMS system, right. And I think where Councillor Rayner is going from, we could do a data trawl through the education department across those schools to have that quantity added into the overall measure, which is then capturing what do we truly spend on it. But by way of further clarification, I know Adam has left, but in terms of suggesting it be a task and finish group or a scrutiny function, I think neither is. I think you've already alluded to that, Chair, as you said, it's about a compliance issue, and there are matters that clearly members have repeatedly raised here. This is a policy development matter and ultimately a decision potentially for Cabinet. Possibly Council. I'd take advice from the monitoring officer on where a policy decision would be taken, probably Cabinet in the first instance, but I'd stand corrected if the monitoring officer says otherwise, around does the Council wish to have a policy on explicitly minimising it, and picking up on the points of the likes of Councillor Cyril Anderson and others have made. It's not a function of this committee. I don't think it's for scrutiny either as task and finish, but it's maybe one way of addressing it. And I think the point that many members have made on here is there are other routes at getting an overall capture of the overall amount, and there is then a policy dimension for Cabinet to potentially bring forward in due course, rather than it being through the audit committee. So I think all the points that have been raised are valid, but it's probably one that needs to ultimately be routed elsewhere. But I would defer to the monitoring officer if I've got any of that routing wrong.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Peter Black, would you like to come in?
Yeah, can I start by disagreeing with Ben? The policy is important, but scrutiny is an important function of policy. And obviously scrutiny's role is identifying issues like this and making recommendations which then can go forward to Cabinet to form policy. So I think that, yes, there is a scrutiny role in looking at this. Audit Committee has a role in scrutinising it, absolutely. And so does the Scrutiny Performance, Scrutiny Programme Committee. What I was going to suggest was that there is currently a workforce working group under the chairmanship of Councillor Cyril Anderson, which is due to meet again later this year. And this, if the committee is able to identify a number of issues which they'd want to look at in some more depth and get some answers from all the officers gathered together, then it may well be that Councillor Anderson's working group could pick that up and then make recommendations through the programme committee, which Cabinet could then have a look at to see whether there would be a need to actually make any policy changes in terms of how we approach this particular issue. That was just a suggestion as one route you could take in terms of taking this forward. That would not mean that audit would stop looking at this, because I think governance and audit still have a role in looking at this, but that would be just one where you could get extra value out of the scrutiny process, which would then hopefully lead on to forming some policy recommendations.
Thank you, Peter. That's very helpful. Councillor Leslie Walton.
Thanks, Chair. I think, looking at the report again, I think it's unfortunate that there's a sort of side mention of supply teachers and supply staff, which is slightly muddies the waters. I mean, I think it's unfortunate that there's information in this report. Sorry, in fact, the opposite. There's information missing, which I think will give us a far better picture and probably give us a positive picture. And I repeat what I was trying to say earlier before the echo mucked me about. I think there is we need to know more about how much progress has been made changing from employing an agency staff to making jobs permanent, and we haven't got that information here, and that I think is something we do need, and we need as the Audit Committee. Now, I understand what Adam was trying to say earlier. I can see what he's saying, because this has come before us 2 or 3 times. But I could also argue, well, we haven't got it sorted quite yet. So as far as I'm concerned, I want it to keep coming here until we are happy, we are assured, reassured. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think it's just because there's information that we haven't quite got here. And I would hazard that if some of the questions that we've raised, the statistics that we've asked for, are brought back to another meeting, we probably will get that reassurance. And I think I agree with what Peter Black's saying, that maybe the next step from here is to see what the workforce working group come out with, and it could well be from that group they reinforce the recommendation that a policy development committee takes up the task of looking at producing a policy as to what we want out of agency staff versus permanent staff, and again maybe look at it just with the area where this report was supposed to be looking at, and that is just staff within the council, and you have a separate, totally separate look at what happens in schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leslie. There are no other hands up that I can see. So this report again was for information, but I think there's been some critical comments made that we need to record for the purpose of the minutes. I think we need to consider Councillor Peter Black's recommendation that scrutiny do perhaps include that in some of the work of the workforce group, I think you referred to, Peter. I think that would be worth looking at. I would like to see...
If Cyril's happy with that, that is, of course. Yes.
If Cyril, you're happy with that?
Yeah, yes, I'm happy with it, but I would have gone along with Councillor Walton. Surely this is really an audit and governance, because it's monies.
Yes,
so
I
am willing to do it, but you know, I don't like taking it out of the hands of the governance and ordinance Committee, because this is a scrutiny committee, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry, Cyril, I wasn't suggesting it be taken out of the hands of the Governance and Audit Committee, quite opposite, in fact. I'm not willing to let it go until we're assured that the use of agency is the last call, not the first call, and that we've got robust systems operating and there is compliance with those systems, particularly in those big business areas, waste parks and cleansing. I'm pleased to hear the comments Adrian made around the focus that's been undertaken on absence from those areas and to drive down the absence, because in driving down the absence you should reduce the agency need. But I think we do need that information and our assurance coming back to the Audit Committee, and if the workforce stream and the scrutiny can offer any additional hand in that, then that would be helpful as well, because I don't think we can accept this ongoing in excess of £4 million month on year on year, really. I'd also ask if Nick, you can go back to Simon and consider whether you can do a detailed piece of work around the use of agency in those departments. So not just a broad breadth of, agency usage across the council, but a detailed piece of work in those high usage areas, looking at not just the use of agency, but what grip is held on the sickness and absence rates, because one normally relates to the other.
Yes, yeah, no problem, Chair. Of course, I'll speak to Simon tomorrow or Friday, and we'll have a look how best to approach that. Yeah. Okay.
So Adriana, thank you for presenting. I know it's been tough for you. You've had a lot of questions, some of which you've answered. Again, the traineeship is a good idea, which was mentioned. The agency costs and the focus on the management of absence is going to be a feature of it. But can I ask if you can take on board some of the comments and the requests for information, bear in mind that Councillor Peter Black and his work streams and his scrutiny work may be asking for some information. But if you can have something back, would October be reasonable request for you?
Yes, I think so. I think that would be fine, Chair. If we just have clarity on exactly what you're asking, and I've obviously jotted comments as we've
I
gone
think what
along.
we're asking for is where are the high usage of agency by way of full-time equivalents, rather than a snapshot of on this day there were that number of people and the costs associated with that.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yes, we'll do.
Sometimes less information is more valuable. So
yes.
what we're aiming to get assurance on, as I said to you earlier, is compliance with the policies and procedures of the council, and the aim is to drive down the agency cost.
Okay.
And if you can consider the usage of or the establishment of a bank. And Councillor Peter Black, I've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chair, if you're happy for the scrutiny process to have a look at this, it'd be useful to have a minute to that effect from this committee, outlining exactly what you want us to have a look at.
Yeah.
Cyril's working group is due to meet in November next, but we could have a chat with Cyril about bringing that forward, if you want to wait for the agent to come back in October and then to address it, that might be a better way of doing it. But it'd be useful to have a minute actually outlining what exactly you want the working group to have a look at, to complement the work you're doing here.
Thank you. Ben, is your hand back up?
It is, and apologies, Chair, for prolonging this, and I am a little nervous that we're making things on the hoof here a bit, if I may. I think the one thing we definitely do agree on is that there will be reports coming back to this committee which is around compliance, because that is what it is predominantly about, and you do have that wider value for money element test. But I think we've also agreed, even where we've disagreed, that there is a role for something or someone, and I think that's appropriate for the committee to record. I don't entirely disagree with Councillor Black. I mean, the reality is it's a continuum, isn't it, between what's policy and at what point does scrutiny start looking at something versus it being policy development. But ultimately, a test against a policy would require a cabinet policy, in my view, and it seemed a little bit stretched, if I'm honest, Chair, in terms of the whole bit. I think it would be appropriate for you to be recording your displeasure at not having all of the information, and that you are still concerned in a number of pocket areas, and that you are resolving that, for want of better words, something be done by something once we've worked out what it is to take forward. And Councillor Black has helpfully referred to the working group that Councillor Anderson has, and I think it's perhaps that, because I think, to be fair to Adam, where he was getting was he was worried that we'd otherwise be back to having a lot of reports coming on this every time, and as you've already rightly recognised, Mr. Chard is not able to answer on behalf of the individual departments. It's a bit like when I've come for accounts receivable, and often a lot of the questions are about individual aspects of some of the departments. So there is a role and process here. So I would just ask that you give consideration to that you be some minuting of you want something, but I wouldn't drive it too far, because there's a debate to be had on where does policy development start and where does it get scrutinised, and ultimately the executive. And I'm not going to prolong that debate here, because it's we could be here for forever. But I would just caution, and I was trying to guide you through that previously. I mean, clearly you've got some remit, but there is a danger that now you've got Adrian being asked to come back in October, plus a working group, plus potentially scrutiny. I just ask you to think perhaps where you want to channel it, where we've all agreed that you want to do something.
Okay, Councillor Mike Lewis.
Yes, I just echo what Ben said, really. There are procedures in council for bringing change that is much needed, and I must admit I agree with everything that's been said vis-a-vis agency workers, and I think we're all of one mind to change to full-time employment for people, but we have to do this in the right way, and the way we do it is through a policy development committee, and then it gets flagged up to the cabinet member, and the cabinet brings it to cabinet, and then it goes to full council for ratification. So that's what we do. Prior to go into full council for ratification, then it goes to scrutiny for them to look at it. You know, you've got a procedure. We put a procedure in place, and this is the procedure that should be followed. I feel that by sending it to scrutiny now, we are short-circuiting that, and it's a dangerous road to go down. Thank you. That's all I have to say, Chair.
Tracy, can I invite you in to give some steer on this one, please?
Yeah, one of the things that was occurring to me as well during this conversation is to avoid any duplication, and that's one thing that we often talk about in terms of scrutiny and audit and scrutiny and PDC, etc. I would suggest this is quite complicated actually in terms of the procedure as to where any policy development goes, and ultimately is it a cabinet decision, etc. Can I suggest, rather than prolong this conversation, that Councillor Peter Black and yourself pick this up separately? One thing that I am quite clear about is that this is, of course, an audit function. And it's really important that the Governance and Audit Committee retain control of this, I think, because it is that assurance element, something that Leslie touched on and something that you've touched on as well, that you were the ones ultimately given the assurance about that. So I think you really need to think about what it is you're going to ask scrutiny, if you are going to ask them to do something, what you actually want them to do. So I would, rather than prolong the conversation now, I'd probably take it outside the meeting, have a discussion, and then report back to the Governance and Audit Committee Chair.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Tracy. Okay, so thank you, Adrian, for coming into that meeting, and we clarify a few points, but if you can tentatively look at the October report, but we'll get clarity as to what exactly we want to see. But the feature is all around compliance and driving down that cost.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. If we can move on to agenda item 10, this is for information. It's the audit tracker report. But can I draw your attention to the Audit Wales report, or the letter that was sent to me on the 25th of May, and it's regarding the follow-up of recommendations for the external audit reports that come to Audit Committee and go to various other committees, including scrutiny. If you recall, we've been asking for a tracker to be generated in the same way as we received the tracker from Simon Cockins, the Chief Auditor, for the internal audit reports. This letter is suggesting that, well, it's reinforcing what we've been asking for in essence, in that we receive, there is a tracker produced to monitor the implementation and the action taken from the Audit Wales. And I just want to open it up for comments if anybody's got any views. The letter is attached to the tracker report. So have anybody got any comments? I've seen other local authorities Audit Wales tracker reports, and they're not dissimilar to the internal audit reports that we receive in Swansea. But I know there's a resource issue with regards to who would maintain and produce the Audit Wales tracker. I think that's the issue from what I'm understanding. Ben, do you want to kick off any comments for this? You still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here, Chair. Sorry, I was dealing with another matter, and in one sense, I think you're right. It is that capacity issue in terms of tracking it through. The committee's made quite clear its views as to what it wants. It's difficult for me to comment on Adam's behalf overall in terms of deploying resources, but there is that capacity constraint, and it is something that he will have to look at in conjunction with myself to facilitate what the committee is after.
Okay, Julie Davis.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to add that when I was working in civil service, we used our ordinary audit recommendation tracker to track external audit recommendations as well.
Yeah, that's the system I was familiar with, but
yeah. Sorry, Chair, I should have added in I didn't give as complete a rounded answer as I should have, in the sense that given that Adam is not here, because part of that is I think he was exploring whether it could be put through his performance team, which is not a team that I manage, so I wouldn't want to commit on his behalf. And I think that was one of the areas where that's Richard Rowland's team, where they sort of are a natural interface. So I'm still a bit stuck as to what to say on Adam's behalf on this one. But that Adam is the lead, and I think he is minded that it goes through the performance team. But the point you've made is still the valid one, which is it's subject to resource and capacity constraints. And I know Adam is weighing up what to do or how to progress it.
I mean, if it's helpful, I can ask the Chief Auditor at Cardiff if he can share the software, because he's offered to share software with Swansea previously. If that makes life easier, because it's a case of populating. And it may be that Audit Wales have got a role to play in this as well, because if they can produce the recommendations in a format that can be, merged into an Excel document, then it may not be as resource intensive as we think.
I think those are fair comments, Chair, and we'll consider all opportunities and options. As I say, I think Adam is intended to be routed through the performance team, but certainly anything that avoids us reinventing the wheel and getting stuff in a format that works better from Audit Wales or seeing what Cardiff have done. Never look the gift horse in the mouth. So I'm always up for considering all options.
Happy to do that, to see if it can be merged into a basic Excel spreadsheet. Councillor Rayner.
Thank you. Yes, it's an interesting letter, but I think we could do with a little clarity on some elements of it. And I particularly refer to looking at Estin reports.
Yeah.
Presumably, I'm hoping, the Audit Committee will look at recommendations of whole authority Estin reports, rather than be having to look at each individual school and Estin report as it comes out. Because I think that would be duplicating, because Estin goes back and monitors the recommendations itself.
Yeah, and I think that was the issue. Audit Wales are not routinely following up all their recommendations. They do in some critical areas, obviously, from what I understand, but not in all areas. I think Estin do. And again, Care Inspectorate Wales, I think, follow up the critical areas, but should we take that outside then, and I'll see if I can get any assistance from what software is used elsewhere, and perhaps liaise with the IT team within the council to see if I can help in any way. Maybe pass that on to Adam then, is it?
Yes, in the first instance, Chair, because he's going to have to decide in terms of where it gets allocated across the teams. And as I say, I don't think I've spoken out of turn in terms of where his thinking is for it to go through the performance team. But certainly, decision overall across the directorate will be Adam's call to make. So yes, please, Chair.
If you can put that as an action for me, Jeremy, for me to contact Cardiff to see if they can. Thank you for that. The next agenda item, we're nearly there, guys. Agenda item 11. Jeremy's been populating the Governance and Audit Committee plan for 21-22 as we move forward. Appendix 1 is the style that we've been receiving for some time now. Appendix 2 is a snapshot for me to capture whether the Governance and Audit Committee are receiving everything that we need to receive over the 12-month period of time. It gives me a bit more clarity as to what's missing. And in doing that, on the training, on Appendix 2, if I can take you to the top line, which is training, I've been chasing the training needs up with Adam, and he's responded today to say that Simon Cockings has pulled together a programme of training for the Audit Committee members to take into account the new roles within the revised terms of reference. He's had that on the 17th of May, and that's being worked through currently, and he's hoping to bring that back, or he's actually taking the paper to CMT next week. So hopefully that's progressing, but that will need to come into the work programme. And I've also asked Jeremy if we could have a 6-monthly report from Counter Fraud, because Counter Fraud is only in there once. And also we're waiting on external audit reports coming through in the plan. If there's anything that any members have spotted is missing in that plan, I'd be grateful if you could alert Jeremy to those gaps, or if there's anything in addition that you feel that the Governance and Audit Committee need to see. And if you've got any details, Tracy, that you think needs to go in there, I'd be grateful for your input as well. Are there any comments on either of those? They are for information. No? Okay. Okay, then that's the end of the agenda for today. Can I thank you to our new members, Councillor Jennifer Rayner and Councillor Clive Lloyd. I believe the third new member, Hannah Lawson, give her apologies, so we hopefully will meet her next time round. Can I say again, thank you everyone for your participation today. Stay safe and stay well. And that closes the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye all.